in week 3 of the second phase of the foundation, and we lift on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then on Tuesday and Thursdays we do team workouts. And on Tuesday it's really focused around speed, agility, quickness, more of a competition oriented, and then on Thursday it's really around kind of discipline and mental toughness. So we had our sixth one of those workouts today, and then we'll go next week through Thursday, and then we'll have spring break, and then we'll come back and we'll start spring practice on the 22nd. And then we'll end with our annual spring game on April 23rd. So that's kind of the calendar looking ahead. Really the first true off season we've had since 2019, where you're going to go into your natural progression, where you have this 8-week period, and then you transition to a 5-week spring ball, and then they go home for May and come back for an 8-week summer. Last year we only had really 1.5 of these workouts. We had a huge COVID outbreak right after the Super Bowl last year, and we just didn't have these. And I think that one thing that as we got into the season and we were having some issues that were some repeated mistakes, is one thing that really stuck out to me is, like, when you miss a certain part of your offseason, you can't get that back. So the things we're doing right now, like, we can't make those up in the summer because we can't ask our kids to do some of the things because they're in game preparation, getting ready for the season. And so this is the first one we've had going back to 2019. Really excited about this staff and team. I think that maybe some of the outside noise doesn't reflect that, but I'll tell you, within these walls right here, man, this group is really excited. This is the hungriest team that we've had. It's the most competitive team we've had. From a group that's where it's supposed to be, doing what it's supposed to be doing. This is by far the best group that we've had. And I told them after the workout today, and this is the 6th one that we've had, like I told you, is competitiveness is at an all-time high here. I thought embracing hard work. This stuff that we're doing right now, I don't think it's anybody's favorite thing to do. Whether it's Coach Joseph, even our strength conditioning staff, our players, our football staff. I don't think this part of the season, this part of the year is your favorite part. But it's hard, but it's necessary. Like, it's necessary, and this group is embracing it. They're embracing the hard work. Really encouraging the lowest amount of really complaining that we've had over 3 years. So really excited about it. Last time we were together, and I've seen some of you guys, whether I've done radio pieces or seen you all at basketball games throughout the year, but really last time we were together as far as in this kind of setting was after the bowl game. And so, right after the bowl game, we had the press conference, and really just a poor performance in all 3 phases, but especially on offense and special teams. Just didn't play the way we needed to play. And I was telling a group of donors the other night, it's really a crisis. Like, I think anytime you play that bad, it's really a crisis. And I really believe that you never waste a good crisis. And so the game was a crisis. And so how do you go about fixing that? Well, I think we've made some significant steps. I think first on offense, we went out and hired what I think was the best available offensive coordinator. He's came in and he's taken the reins on our offense. And you're going to spend some time with him later today. I know that several of you have had some one-on-one interactions, but really excited about what Graham's doing and bringing in Tony, former NFL receiver that had great success, one of the top offenses at Coastal Carolina as well, and Tony Washington. Second, and on special teams. Just didn't play up to our standards. And that's something that we've taken great pride in going back over the last 7 years, is playing great special teams. So we're addressing a couple things personnel-wise. You'll see release on that here in the next week or so. And then from a schematic standpoint, we're doing some things from a coaching responsibility-wise and from a scheme-wise. We're doing some things different that I'll talk once we get into spring ball on. And then third thing is we need to transform our roster. I think that roster management, and I know y'all are going to have some questions, roster management is so key now. And it's not just about on the field, it's in the locker room as well. And we just weren't in a good place after the bowl game. And so we've gone to work. I'll give you some hard numbers just so you know, because I think that this is really a hard part to understand for the fans. I'm going to try to explain it to you all, and then I'll kind of talk about where we're at. So right now we got 62 guys on scholarship. That's where it's at, okay? That's what's in this building. Again, the hope is we'll add 1, maybe 2 over the next week or so. But we've got 12 guys that are signed, all right? So that's 74, and then we got 7 open spots that we will fill hopefully before the summer, but definitely before we open up fall camp. So that gets us to 81. You can have 85, right? And so we'll have some attrition. And again, all attrition is not bad attrition, okay? So we'll have some attrition between now and end of spring. That's kind of the way it goes. But I fully anticipate us being around 78 or 80 going in to fall camp, and then you have some opportunities for some blue shirts. You have some opportunities for walk-ons that earn those opportunities. So again, and I think I try to go in detail on this before, or maybe on signing day in December, but we're going to be really close to kind of where everybody else is. And so that's from a roster management standpoint. Talk about offensively, just heading into spring. Really the two things for us is from an install standpoint, installing new offense, and then fundamentally we've got to be more consistent. I think after going back and watching our games and really studying it, fundamentally, offensively, we've got to get better. And going through I know quarterback's a hot topic. It's kind of why I started with this. So here's the thought process on the quarterbacks going in. We've got 3 guys that are going to get the reps during the spring. And this isn't going to be a deal where they're going to go through 15 practices and we're going to get a really good evaluation. And I've had the question a lot, just being out in public and things like that. Why didn't we go get a transfer quarterback in mid-year? Well, I think there's a couple reasons. I don't know how, if we went and got a transfer quarterback, I don't know how we get a really good evaluation on the young guys. And it's not just about this fall, but it's about the future. And we got 3 guys here, in Garrett Green, Nico Marchio, and Will Crowder, that deserve the opportunity to show what they have. Okay, so we're going to go through the spring, and the belief is that one of them will take reins of the job, or we'll get it narrowed down to 2. And if it's not the case, then we'll go find a guy. There'll be guys available. But I thought it was important for them, it's important for the trajectory of our football team, to let those guys have the ability to go out and compete in the spring. And so we'll do that. The running back room, I'm excited about that. We've added some pieces. Really looking forward to seeing what Dixon can do in this offense, seeing the improvements that Justin Johnson has made. I thought he was one of the few bright spots in the bowl game. And then Jalen Anderson is a guy that you go back and watch his high school film, and then what he's done here to get himself in a position to be able to compete in the spring. Really excited to see what he's going to do. Then going over to tight end, we've got some guys that are going to get some work. Brian Palinde, who's coming in from Colorado State, has been used primarily as a blocker. Like, he's really good at what he's been asked to do, and we brought him in here to really add a physical component there. He'll go through spring. Then we got some young guys in Traylon Davis and Victor Wickstrom that are going to be here, and a lot of quality reps, and they need to take another step. Up front at offensive line is we return the group that played last year. And so I think it's about them is we played good against teams that we should play good against. And that's where we were a year ago. Now, when we play against these teams that, I think we played like 5 or 6 teams in the top 30 in the country in defense. Like, we've got to be able to raise our game. And I think that's the next step for that group. I think for this spring, like Jaquay Hubbard and Jordan White have had tremendous off seasons. Can that translate when we get into spring ball? Can they push to not only be in the rotation, but can they push for one of those starting spots? We're going to exchange Wyatt Milam and Brandon Yates. Milam's going to go over and play the left side for us. He's left-handed. It's a more natural fit for him. Brandon Yates is going to slide over to the right side. And then at wideout, we've got fewer numbers. And that's one thing that we've kind of learned as we've gone through this process. You kind of live and learn as far as what your numbers are. Used to be in the wide receiver world that you'd want, 10, 12 guys, kind of have a 3 deep at each of those positions. What's become abundantly clear to us over the last probably 2 years is you can't keep that many guys happy anymore. And we had a solid group in that room last year, but you can't keep 7 or 8 guys happy. And so the roster numbers inside that room have thinned out, but we've got quality players, and I'm excited for Tony and Graham to get their hands on these guys. And what I mean by that is really is teach them and what they want in our new offense here. And I'm excited for the strides. I think that Sam James and Bryce Wheaton have made positive strides over the last 3 years. I think there's another significant step they can make. Caden Prather's got a chance to be special. And then Reese Smith's a guy I think that, and this is me, I think I underutilized him last year. I think he's a guy that can be a significant piece and is plenty good enough. He was one of our best special teams players a year ago, but I think he can be a significant piece for us offensively. And then and so that's kind of the picture offensively. I'll go over who's going to be out. Really, the only guy that will be out for the entire spring is Michael Laughlin. He's progressing well from his knee injury. He's on track and to be back in the fall and be full go there, but he will be out for the spring. Turn it over to defensively. I think the 2 things that really are focal point for us is fundamentally, and we got to get better situationally. And we just came back from a defensive retreat with myself and our defense staff, and that's one thing that we really talked about. Was we got to get better in situations. One thing that was a huge point of emphasis for us last spring was red zone defense. That was we were really good in 2020. Red zone defense was a little bit of a weakness. We flipped the script on that, and I think what you emphasize is what you get a lot of times. When we emphasize red zone defense, I think we were 5th in the country a year ago. Now we got to get better into game scenarios, 2-minute, 4-minute situations, because we had some chances to finish some games last year defensively, and we only were able to do it, I think, on 2 out of the 5. And so we want to really make some improvements there. If you look at our depth chart there, we're going to be younger on defense, but this is the most athletic group that we've had defensively, and I think sometimes everybody in this coaches are the worst about getting really hung up on experience, okay? Because experience makes you comfortable. Well, they've been out there, they've done this. Well, really, I'll take talent over experience. And that's the hard thing, and I've been telling our coaches, hey, yeah, we lack experience, especially in the back end, but we have the most speed that we've had. We've had the most athleticism that we've had, and we've got guys that are versatile. So when you're versatile, you can kind of mix up where guys play. You can give the quarterback a different look, and we have the ability to do that. Start defensively. We'll start up front, and I'll mention up front, Akeem Messador, he'll be out for the spring. He had an upper body injury after the bowl game that he's got corrected. He'll be fine. He'll be full go for the summer, but he'll miss the spring. And I got a couple guys that I'm excited about seeing, okay? Dante will go through spring, but we're not going to put him in a position where he's going to have a lot of contact or anything like that. Very similar to our approach with how we went it with Letty last year, if you'll remember that, you all that were here. So the guys that I think this is a huge spring for him are Sean Martin, and he's one of the guys that's had a great offseason for us. We're going to bounce him back and forth between 3 and 5 technique. And then the other guys that I think that are ready to make significant movements are Jordan Jefferson, who quietly had a really good end of the season at that nose guard spot and allowed us some flexibility, because as we went through the year last year, Akeem Messador played less and less really at that nose position, started playing some more 3 and 5. And so looking forward to that. I think Hammond Russell is a guy that we were able to redshirt last year, and I think it's going to pay off for us down the road. He's progressing. And then I think Taurus Simmons and Jalen Thornton both have had really good off seasons. And then I'm excited to see what Zac Lawton can do. He redshirted last year at Cincinnati, came over as a transfer. He's gone through our winter, and he's strong and really a smart football player. Bandit, Linnell Carr, and Jared Bartlett are in a battle. It's time for both those guys to make the next step. Jared Bartlett's had as good an offseason as anybody in our program. And then at linebacker, Lance Dixon returns at will. Extra Lowe missed the spring from the injury that he sustained at Kansas State, but again, he's on track to he's on track to be running and to be full speed this summer, so that's a positive. He's a 6-year player, so spring practice at this point of his career is not that huge a deal anyway. But Lance Dixon is going to get a majority of those snaps at will linebacker. He played really well in the bowl game. He was injured toward the end of last season, but he's a guy that he's got all league opportunity. He really does. I mean, from a talent perspective, and then Lee Koba, junior college transfer at Mike linebacker. He's come and really established himself from the first week he was here. One of our hardest workers, extremely appreciative, has a lot of gratitude. One of our best teammates, and that's shown up in a relatively short time. And then we'll go out. Ja'Cory Hammett's going to play Mike linebacker this spring too, and that's an area that we'll, with one of those 7 open spots that we'll address there at linebacker when we go. At Spear, St. McLeod will return. Naeem Muhammad, who was injured for most of the season last year, will come and push him at that spot. And then at corner, Charles Woods, who I think is as good as any corner that returns in our league. Excited for him. This is the first time he's been through an entire offseason here, and fully expect him to really kind of take a leadership role as he's done already through the winter in the secondary. Marcus Floyd at corner, very similar in style to Charles Woods. And if you'll see a little bit of a kind of a pattern here. Really believe in these upward trajectory guys. And what I mean by that, Charles Woods was an all-league player in an FCS school 2 years ago. and he's came here, and I think our on social media we released not too long ago talking about his coverage percentage, and I think he has the highest returning coverage percentage in our league, and that translated. He came in and really was a formidable corner in our league, and I fully expect Marcus Floyd to make that same transition. A really good player, all OVC player at Murray, coming over, and I think he'll translate and be a really good football player for us at corner. Nick Troy Fortune is kind of getting back into the flow. He'll start kind of limited in the spring, and the hope is he'll get back to full speed after missing the last 6 games. And then Andrew Wilson Lamp is a guy we redshirted last year. We got a lot of really hope for him. He's long. He'll be the longest guy in that room, and he can run. He's got really impressive speed. And then at safety, Aubrey Burks returns. He'll be able to go through spring. He and Hershey McLaurin will be at our free safety spot, really competing there. And over at cat safety, Davis Mallinger, who showed some flashes last year in the games he played. Maybe as fast as anybody we have on our football team. He and Caleb Coleman and Malachi Ruffin will kind of compete there at cat safety. So make sure I didn't skip anybody that's going to be out. Eddie Vesterinen, he'll miss the spring with the same injury he missed the bowl game with. So I think that's a pretty good picture of who's going to be out there and kind of what the expectations are. So I know that's long, but I wanted to kind of cover. We've got 13 newcomers that y'all knew about. We released those that have been here all during the semester. So with that, questions?
So, offensive spring, the first time you're installing a new offensive scheme since you took over.
Yep.
So is that the key, just getting your offense installed? Or?
Yeah, so I think, Greg, kind of what I said is like we want to get the plays installed, make sure our guys know what to do, okay? And we'll probably be a little bit slower, more probably in the previous two. Well, we didn't get to the previous spring, okay, in 21 is – we really worked a lot of situational football. Probably be less of that offensively, more of just getting some reps with the plays, and trying to create some muscle memory, and then really focusing on the fundamental aspect of it, especially up front in the run game.
Going back to the COVID outbreak that you mentioned, roughly how many guys did that affect? And then
last year?
Yeah, and then how did that affect you? You mentioned that really, took a toll on you during the season. Any specific areas, the game?
Like the COVID deal was back in February, and so we had 30 guys out for I think 3 weeks there in February. We never had a shutdown, but we had it, and what we did is we just went to those really small workout groups again, kind of like we did the summer of 20, and so we did that through. If you remember, we pushed spring back last year, and so we went to those really small workout groups, and we weren't able to do these team workouts. So, like in these team workouts, what you're trying to do is you're trying to put your guys, and I'm talking about in the winter workouts, you're trying to put your guys in as much pressure, all right, where they have to overcome things mentally and physically as you possibly can. And so, really, we had one, all right, during the second workout, we got news that we had some positives, so we split out of it. And so, what I figured out is like you don't get those back. And like we tried to overcome and do some things in the summer that we normally wouldn't do because we missed those workouts, but you don't get that time back. There's kind of there's a pattern of how you got to go through your season. You start with the winter, you go through spring, you go through summer, get into fall camp, then you get into your season mode. And we missed a significant piece of that winter, and I think it showed up as far as some detailed things and some mental toughness things that we weren't as good at as you hoped we would be in the fall.
How does the terminology aspect work with Graham and what you have now? Does it change a lot?
So really, he's got full control of it, John. So like, I think, and this is a good question for him because I don't want to answer for him. I think so. What he's basically done, he's came in and evaluated what we did here, and there were some things that we did well. Now it wasn't good enough as a total package, right? And I think some of that is he's going to give a new wrinkle to it. He's, I think his personality and his success and things like that. But what I think he'll do is, and I don't think I know, but he can answer this, is he's going to look and see what he felt really good about what we were doing and hold on to those, and then come in with the things that he's been really good at in the past and install those as well. From a terminology, though, it's all going to be his.
So it's going to be a learning component for some.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we've been working on it. You get I think what the NCAA allows you 2 hours a week, and so he's kind of done a good job getting with the quarterbacks. And now we're 3 weeks in to really using that meeting time with our team, and so we're not necessarily starting at ground zero when we have first practice on March 22nd.
You mentioned obviously the talented and seven scholarships. How much has that changed in the last couple of weeks where you guys are going to use those? You mentioned the linebacker now. Obviously.
Yeah, not really. So we've kind of been. Defensively is kind of where our focus has been as far as with those allocations. Okay, we're going to use one on special teams. All right, we've got to get better at kicking the ball off. I think that's something that we've talked about. That's something that was a real struggle for us a year ago. It put us, our starting field position was one of the worst in college football, and so we've got to do a better job there. So that's definitely going to be one. And then defensively, like we've always had the intention to add a linebacker. Okay, so that hasn't changed, and that'll be a best available. We can do some things from a personnel standpoint to, we can play as many as 3 in the game or as few as 1, and really still call most of our base packages. And then we want to add at least 1, maybe 2 pieces in the secondary. But I think it's important to see, like, we're going through the winter, and like all these young guys we have in the secondary, they've made improvements. But we need to see them play live football. And there'll be another wave of significant people, in the transfer portal after spring practice. And so our thoughts were, let's go through the spring. Let's see. May come out somewhere where we think we're going to have a potential need. Somebody may do better than we really anticipated. Okay? But it could be, hey, they're ready to be a backup, maybe not a starter. Let's go find a starter. That's kind of how we're approaching it. Yeah, go on, Sam.
You mentioned transfer portal. What are the challenges of that? Obviously, a lot of guys are leaving everywhere, but every situation is different.
So the thing is like, and y'all have heard me say this, and like, so I don't want to like repeat stuff I said. Like I'm not inherently against the transfer portal. Like I'm not. Like we're going to benefit. We're going to lose guys. Just like everybody in the country that decides to do business in there, you're going to gain some and you're going to lose some, right? What we got to get to is we've got to make roster management where it's really truly manageable, right? And so, and these are talks that are ongoing, whether it's in the AFCA, whether it's Shane on the at the NCAA level, is we've got to get into windows. Like we have to get into windows. First of all, let's call it what it is. It's free agency, right? And so, in what other sport do you have free agency year round? Well, that answer to that would be one, college athletics, right? And so we've got to get it into windows, and it has to be feasible for the student athlete and for the school. All right. So what you want is you want to have certain windows where the transfer portal is open and certain when it's closed, right? Just like free agency. And so the 2 periods that make the most sense for me is the month of December. Maybe it goes into January, mid-January. That's the first. It's postseason, so you don't have guys that are leaving your roster during the season. So it doesn't put your depth at a position. You don't have guys that are just walking out the door during the season. It opens a window, December and January, where, all right, you have signing day where you know what your number is going to be. You can use them accordingly. It gives those student athletes that are going in the portal opportunity to take visits during that time. And then you do it again some mid-April through the month of May. Okay, and that way, again, you have an opportunity, if you have holes, to go fill those. You have an opportunity as a student athlete to take visits and then get into your new place in the summer where you have some ability to adapt as you go through the summer workouts. That's what makes sense to me. It's really hard in the current model that we have is to manage roster, okay? And I think you can do those windows without taking it away from the student athlete.
Neal?
Doc.
Oh, yeah. How do you you're pretty analytical in your approach to almost everything. How have you approached the idea that people are leaving? Have you studied why they're leaving?
Yep.
And how have you and the coaching staff had to change in your dealings with players to accommodate that?
So what you do is you do your best assuming. I mean, honestly. So, and what I mean is you always have your roster, right? And this is something that you used to do periodically. Now you do it almost every single day. And so what you do is you have your roster, your scholarship roster, and you have potential flight risk, because you have guys that for a couple different reasons. Maybe it's something going on at home they're having issues with that may cause them to leave. Maybe it's somebody that if they don't get a starting job, that either them or their parents are going to really push them to leave. So you got to kind of anticipate. All right. Now you hope it doesn't happen. In most cases, you hope. Not all cases, but in most cases, you hope it doesn't happen. But you still got a plan, right? The ones that are really hard are ones that come out of left field. All right. And to our credit, like, we've probably had 2 of those. That just, I get a email from compliance saying somebody went over there, right? Because that's how it works. I don't think some people know that. Like, 99% of the people handle it the right way, but sometimes you get like just notes from compliance, and that's what it is, right? But we haven't been blind. Like, most of these aren't blindsided deals, right? These are things that you kind of anticipate. You kind of make plans and say, okay, hey, if this happens, then we need to be able to react this way. And now, if it doesn't happen, then we don't have to. But am I making sense, Bob? Like, you have it, and you say, okay, these guys could potentially leave. All right, and then you try to make your plans. If they do, this is what we're going to do. If they don't, great. But that's kind of how you go about it.
What kind of problems, Josh in particular, I'm thinking of? I mean,
Yeah.
the guy.
Here's the thing. I think.
He's coming back, and then he left.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say is about this is like I think he's a good kid. I don't have anything negative to say, and I don't think it serves myself or our program to get up here and talk about guys that have left. And here's what I mean by that, because like for whatever reason he decided to leave, and we're going to coach the ones we got, right? And he made a decision. Now the one thing about him is, like, I was surprised when he came back. He came to me sometime in December and said he was coming back. That was a surprise to me, and then I think his feelings changed over the course of a 5 or 6 week period, and he can answer to that. But we don't have any ill will toward him. But I don't think it does us any good, as myself as the head football coach or our football program, to come out and say anything glaringly negative about anybody that's leaving. I just don't think so. I'll turn 42 next week. You know what I mean? These kids, most of them are 18 to 22. It doesn't serve us well, right? So the attitude I've taken is, hey, we want to coach the kids that want to be here. And so let's take what we have and let's coach them up as best we can. Let's create a great environment where they're excited. And like I said, this isn't a knock to anybody that's left, but our locker room, man, like, they're hungry. They're excited. Like, they feel really good about what's down there. Okay? And it's our job as coaches to go add pieces to make us better. And we have the ability to do that with those 7 open spots.
Neal, it's a complicated problem. I get that. And I think a lot of people go, oh, fix it. Like, it's that easy, right? But is the simplest, it seems like redshirting kids is hard nowadays, because why let them sit? They're going to go somewhere else. Do you have to play guys early now? Is there any, like, if-then scenario that you think may work?
Yeah. I think the redshirting is going to become less and less, and unless it's guys up front. We were able to do so with some secondary guys last year. And what happened is we didn't go into the year, Mike, really anticipating or planning to redshirt them. But what happened is, as we went through the year, all right, a couple of those young guys like Caleb Coleman, Davis Mallinger, who's the third one? My mind's skipping here. Lamp. So we didn't really go into the year really anticipating redshirting them. But what happened is they weren't playing enough snaps. So when we got to the end of the year, my decision was, what's the right thing to do? Rather than play them in 5, it's better to redshirt them, right? And so, but I think now going back and looking, if it for the class that's coming in and moving forward, is we're going to be really more intentional about playing those young mids and skills more on special teams early, and making them prove that they're not ready, rather than making them prove that they're ready on special teams. So now I think it's a little bit different, Mike, when you're talking about big guys, because some of those guys just aren't physically ready to go play from a weight or a strength standpoint. So I think you'll still see some red shirts in those bigs, but for us, and I think across college football, you're going to see less and less red shirting. I think we should evaluate the 5 for 5 rule. That's what I think. I think you get 5, you play 5. I mean, I really do. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it solves some of our roster management issues. That's not going to be a front burner issue, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it solves some problems.
January enrollees, who are you excited to see in the spring?
Well, I think that all of them put themselves in a position. I think the ones that probably stick out the most, as far as, I'm intrigued to see how Nico You know, and not just because it's him, because any of the quarterback that comes in that has the resume that he has, and then comes in and plays early, like I'm always intrigued. How fast does it take from a quarterback perspective for the game to slow down? You know, and he played at a really good high school against really good competition, but he wasn't playing against teams like our defense, you know, that he's going to see every day now. So I'm intrigued by him. You know, I talked about Zac Lawton. You know, he's a guy that, you know, he's really hungry because he redshirted last year at Cincinnati, and so and because we have some injuries up there of guys that are going to miss spring, it's going to create an opportunity for him to really get a lot of reps with our first and second unit. On defense, Lee Koba, you know, the guy he's you know, he went to Syracuse, it didn't work out. You know, he got humbled and he went down to East Mississippi Junior College. And now he's got this kind of new lease, and he never has a bad day. He's attacked workouts. He's really done a nice job learning. So I'm excited for him because, man, he's going to get so many reps. So we start March 22nd. How much improvement is he going to make through the spring game on the 23rd? Looking at I think the secondary pieces, you know, like – I really feel like in this group between Aubrey Burks, Hershey McLaurin, Davis Mallinger, Lamp, Caleb Coleman, like somebody, probably 2 to 3 of those guys I'm going to be sitting here at the end of spring going, man, they're a little further ahead than I thought they were.
A couple of proposals to, again, limit a little bit more contact during the spring. Does that affect the way that you're doing things? And overall, does it affect the game? Is it having an effect on tackling?
To be honest with you, like all these that are coming along, most people have been doing them, you know, because, and the reason I say that is like your rosters in general just aren't what they used to be 10, 15 years ago. And it even goes back to like surgeries. You think about this, you know, 15 years ago, how many labrum surgeries were there, right? There wasn't a ton, right? And some of these, you know, somewhat minor procedures to your knees, you just didn't see those a whole lot. So now, like some of the things that happen over the course of the season and cause you to miss spring. And so, like, we're not going to go out. We won't have a scrimmage where we go out and scrimmage 150 snaps. Like, this is just not going to happen. You just physically can't do it anymore. So a lot of the rules that are going in place are just verifying what everybody's done, you know, probably for the last 5 years from a spring ball perspective. So I don't know. Does it affect the game? I don't know. I mean, I think the product's still pretty good. You know, I really do. I think when you watch it, I don't think that the common fan or even me as I'm watching an NFL game, because they've been practicing like this for a long time. You know what I mean? Those guys are they're not out seeking contact a lot during the week or during their OTAs or even during fall camp. And so I don't think it's affected the game at that level. I think early on in the season you see some tackling that's not as good as it should be, and I think that could be maybe a test, but I think it gets better as the year goes on too.
Quarterback is a natural leader position, and you've got 3 young guys. How do you approach that with them going into the spring, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, the good thing about those 3 is they're kind of alpha mentalities. Like if you were in there, John, watching that workout this morning, like a guy that would really stick out to you is Garrett Green. You know, like these change directions and those type of things, and being rah-rah and having energy. Like if you had no idea who any of those kids were, you'd have been like, well, who's that? You know, who's that guy running around? You know, and then like the way Nico and Goose both, the way they carry themselves, they kind of draw people, right? And you always want, like at a quarter, I always talk about being a chameleon. You want guys that can really kind of, regardless of what group they're around, whether it's the receivers, whether it's the O-line, whether they're going to eat with a CEO or they're going to go to an elementary school, you always want those guys that are really kind of the face of your program. You want them to be chameleons. And regardless of what kind of the environment they're in, they still stick out. And they attract others, and all 3 of those have that rare ability. So I'm excited. They get along, which I think is important. I'm excited to see how they're going to progress with Graham leading them there. And you know, hey, to the best man win the job.
You know, if you do, I understand this is way down the road, but if you do go to the sport for a quarterback, if parameters, that would be somebody who has starting experience,
Yeah. So so what I'll say this is, let's approach that when we get there. Okay. So, we're approaching in the spring like, hey, these guys are gonna come out and somebody's gonna come and be able to win the job. If we get to that, then I think it has to be somebody that is an older guy that has significant experience. But that's not something that we're spending a lot of time on right now.
You mentioned Nick Troy for a minute.
Mhm.
I think kind of gathered that he was still working his way back a little bit physically. He's subtly the most experienced guy in the whole secondary, and a guy that's been through a lot of adversity, obviously. How important is he to that room, just in terms of his leadership, his experience, and what he can pass on to some of those younger guys you were talking about?
Yeah, I think when you look at the secondary, so he has played now for really 2.5 years. And then Charles Woods has actually played more games, but I think 25 of those were at Illinois State, where he was previously. And Marcus Floyd, the same thing. He's played in almost 30 games, I think. You can check me on that. But as far as playing experience here, you're right. Nick Troy has the most. The thing that I think Nick Troy has is, like, he's a guy that's he's a great person, right? And so for him, he's coming back from this injury. He had a lower leg injury that caused him to miss every game since the bye week. He missed the last 7 games of the season. Our hope is that he gets released next week, and then what we'll do is we'll progress him into spring practice. Does that make sense? So, like, he's not going to go out for the first week or so and practice every rep. The hope is as we go through the spring, his load will continue to increase. But he's a guy that, with those young guys that we have in there, he's a guy that's played, and he's one of the better people, so they're looking to him. So he has that respect, even though he hasn't played, going back to the Baylor game.
Recruiting areas for the 2 new guys, and who takes over in South Florida?
Yep. So Tony's going to do that. Tony's going to take over in South Florida. He'll have that North Carolina area where he's from. And then Shadon's going to go, and he and Tony will both work at the South Carolina, which has been good to us. We'll work there. And then Graham's going to major in quarterbacks. Jeff Coons is going to go down into Columbus. Kenny threw this at me, so I'm kind of – I think that hits it. I think that's the main – any areas that you were thinking of? Okay. Anybody else? Great. Anybody?
I want to hear real quick about
Yep.
Linjay. How is he different? Size-wise, he's a different type of back than Letty was, and I guess Anderson would be the closest to size-wise to Letty. How does that change your running back?
Yeah. Well, Tony's probably, I don't know, inch and a half, but Tony's up. He's 210 plus. I mean, yeah, he's a bigger, thicker kid, and the way Tony played in the bowl game and then against Kansas, I thought that showed real positive signs, right? And then Justin knew in the bowl game he was going to get more, and like when you're going to play, like that changes a lot of things, right? And he took those bowl practices, and you saw the steady improvement. So the way he played in the game was no surprise to me as far as how productive he was when on his few opportunities. And then Linjay has really been a part-time player at Clemson, but really productive. I don't know if he ended this way. At one point, he had the most yards per carry of anybody that ever played at Clemson. It was just pretty impressive. I don't know if it ended that way, but I know at one point he was. And so he's got the ability to hit a home run, which at any point, and he had some really long runs at Clemson. And then Jalen is a guy that did a lot of things in high school. He played corner, he played receiver, he played running back. He's really versatile. He got here late. He didn't get here till, I don't know, maybe late September, early October. And so in a lot of ways, he's still playing himself into shape. But we got a good group there. It's a talented group, and I know Chad's looking forward to working with him. Anybody else?
You mentioned flipping Wyatt to left tackle. Any other position moves of note?
It's not. That's what I was telling him. We used to be able to do that a bunch in the spring. Times change now.
Okay. Thanks,
Anybody else?
Coach.
All right, appreciate it. Mike will get to you on open days and all that kind of stuff. We'll get y'all some access. So.